We are live, assuming
I
YouTube
will.
works how I think it does. It's nice how it's always just a crapshoot on like when the button actually is. So favorite part of the platform. But hello there, everyone. Welcome back finally to another episode of TapCaf Transmissions. I am Corey, joined for this episode by Mr. Ilkin of Kings and Generals. How are you doing tonight, Ilkin?
Uh, I was
Mr.
doing
Ilkin,
okay until you introduced me.
as Mr. Ilkin. You don't want to be
No,
Mr. Ilkin?
once again, you forgot that I need like a nickname. Uh, Egg gets enigmatic or something like that. Can I
I
get
have
something
I
like
really
that?
haven't done that in a long time though.
I think I need it in my
Okay,
life.
so you just need an adjective starting with I.
Yes,
The ickiest Ilkin,
that works. At
the
least I get some.
illustrious Ilkin.
And just don't call me idiot. I guess otherwise, go for
That's
it.
that's for
And
your 10th appearance.
number two, you always say that Justin is Canadian. I would like to be called Canadian too, please.
I've called you Canadian every time.
Not every
I
time,
don't
apparently.
introduce Justin as Canadian all the time. It comes up in the course of the episode because we talk about like red green or something.
I'm sorry, I need more affirmation.
All right, Ilkin, the Canadian Kings and Generals creator. Get some alliteration in there.
Thank you.
And tonight we are finally talking about, speaking of Canadian alliteration, we have Cataclysm, which I will hold up in front of the camera.
I do
So
have it on my phone. Does
we
that
were
help?
we were going to be talking about this like a month ago. Unfortunately, some stuff came up, uh, so we weren't able to do it at the time. But we're here now. We read Convergence quite a while ago, and yeah, so we're going to be talking about Cataclysm by Lydia Kang. Got to say the author's name. And this is the second of two High Republic Phase 2 adult novels. So it's the both the second book and the finale, which is a lot. It's a lot of pressure to put on one book. With the other phase, there was three of them. Now there's just two. So what did you think of Cataclysm?
I think I know why Justin stopped doing that. Like, it's a good book, but the plot is so convoluted, and half of it is kind of hidden in the young adult books that we haven't read. At least I haven't read.
Yeah. Battle of
So
Jeddah is also pretty important
yeah,
for
so
this.
I had to go back and kind of skim the wiki for it, but obviously wiki is not nearly enough to be able to have a good opinion of what was happening in Battle of Jeddah. But in short, I liked it, but I felt like, as you said, it had to do too much. And maybe having two books covering that plot would have been better.
Yeah, like I think I enjoyed it, but I do think Convergence was better,
Yeah.
or that at least I like Convergence more. Not even just because it's doing, or not even just because it's bringing together the plot thread from the other stuff. I think you can kind of get a sense for what's going on without having to read everything else. But
All right.
there's one of the problems that Justin especially talks about that he has with the High Republic stuff is there's so many characters around, and I
Yep.
think part of why this feels like it's covering so much is because you have like 7 or 8 point of view characters alone.
Yep.
So it's hard to get into uh, any of the individual characters too deeply because I think there's only maybe one Syrian fan 2 perspective chapter in the first 100 pages, yet they are kind of the big two characters for this point.
From the previous book, right?
Yeah.
Um, Thing is, like, um, I don't want to start the whole Legends and canon thing, but when you have Leia and Han and Luke, um, I don't want to be like glib, but basically they are not characters, right? They are legends, more or less. They don't really have character arc, not like a big one or like anything, but they're story characters. And it's easy to build other characters around someone already established. Here we basically, with every book, we establish new cast of characters. And in phase 1, I felt like they did a better job because at least we got some continuity between characters and some character arcs within the trilogy of adult books. Here, this duology, again, the story is very interesting. I like the story, but the characters, there's so many of them, and especially the Jedi characters who kind of mush together into one blur. If that's something
I
I
think
can
like
say.
Shuriel Roy,
Yeah,
Crichton's son, Ada Forte, a lot of them do end up feeling like, okay, this is Jedi number one, this is Jedi number two, and
yeah,
they're
that's
not
my point.
quite
And
as major as the other
I
ones.
can't really like. Obviously, like I have read the book like 2 months ago. Maybe I'm forgetting something, but it's still difficult to discern between them, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And it's becoming like a constant thing with High Republic. I'm sure that in the third phase they will go back to the main characters of the first phase, etc., etc. But motivations, especially, they are constant question for me. Like for instance, I wrote down in my notes that I don't understand Axel's trauma. So
Right.
it's basically he's shown like as someone who is very damaged, and it's shown that he needs a sense of belonging. It's shown what his trauma is, the death of his father, like in front of him, right in front of him. But I still don't get the full motivations.
Right. I think part of that is, which I think my bigger problem with the characters kind of connects to this, in that for the characters that did play a big role in Convergence, so Gidala, Axel, Fantu, and Siri, they end this book, especially Axel, in the same place they ended the last book, and they follow the same trajectory to get there, although they get less time to do it because there's so much focus on other stuff. And
Yeah.
Axel is, I think, particularly noteworthy there because if there is one character who I think gets the most, I'd have to like, I haven't counted chapters. He just stands out more to me, but I think he's the one that gets kind of the most focus or the most plot that revolves
Yeah.
around him. Uh, it yeah, just kind of felt like we already did a lot of that with him, and it felt like it was hard to get into the first half of his story because we had to just watch him revert all the way back to where he was. So
So
it
it's
was just kind of
basically whatever character arc he had in the first book, apparently it's a ruse. So because it's a
yeah.
ruse, because it's a lie, now he has to basically do that again.
Yeah, and it just made me feel like that jealous stuff, or Gela, I'm not sure which. Gela, I'm going to go with Gela. That her
Mhm.
stuff was just a bit more exasperating because you kind of know where it's going, and then he's doing the same thing. He ends up like, oh, he's going to do his time in prison, and he's going to be a better person now. And it just felt like if he was going to get to that point, he would have gotten to that point before. And like, addiction is tough. Being in a difficult psychological place is tough. So it's kind of realistic that people would backslide. But as a storytelling device, going through the same narrative with them twice in two books when there are only two books, kind of, I don't know, it just felt like we'd we'd been there and done that with him.
Yeah, but before we dive deeper, do you want to like summarize the book?
Yeah, we should probably go over a bit of what's going on there. So the book takes place after Convergence, where we have the two planets, Irem and Rono, who have been on and off at war for either a very long time or 5 years. It's kind of, but the Prince Fantu and Princess Siri have gotten married. They're bringing their worlds together, and there was going to be a uh, peace negotiations, talk, signing ceremony on Jeddah. That has exploded off screen in the Battle of Jeddah book, and things are kind of starting to fall apart. Uh, And at the start of Cataclysm, it seems like there might be some shenanigans going on with some bioweapons being deployed on Fan 2's planet. So you start getting some tensions raising between Irem and Arono again, and the so we deal a bit with getting them back on the same page, and a lot of Jedi start going to the planet Dalna, where the plot with the Path of the Open Hand and then the Closed Fist and their force hunting dogs, the levelers, starts to come out more. The nameless from some of the other stories. So a bunch of the Jedi go to Dalna. Everything comes together. They finally reestablish that Irem and Arono are going to be friends. We get kind of the first inklings of Starlight Beacon being set up, and a bunch of Jedi turn to ash, much like what's his name did in the first wave.
Okay.
And that's
Yeah,
that's about what happens.
Okay, so a few things from the plot itself. One thing that I feel like you didn't mention is that the book is constantly using communication problems as a literary device.
Mm-hmm.
So, like everything, not everything, but most things that happen, they happen either because the communication buoys were destroyed or taken over or somehow corrupted. And I honestly, I didn't like it. I felt like it's a very.
But it's a metaphor.
Well, yes, it's a metaphor for communication breaking down within the family and within the Republic and within etc., and within the Jedi Order, actually. But as a literary device, as a story device, I didn't feel it's like needs to be used so many times. It's like 5 or 6 times where the communication buoy is taken over or it's somehow used to confuse our heroes, etc. And again, Star Wars is a bit weird in terms of its technology. Like, at times, you feel like you basically can send a message or a full video from one end of the galaxy to the other in a matter of seconds. And at times, you need like a basically fiber cable connecting the planets or something like that.
Yeah, like even at I think the first chapter with Chancellors Mallow and Greylark, they're talking about events that happened on the moon between Irem and Arono like an hour before or had been going on that day. Whereas part of the resolution on down is like they can only really go to Irem and Arono for help. That's what brings them together to kind of cooperate once again. And I think there were kind of similar things happening with Convergence. Because some of the communications had been cut and there was just no one else was around that could ever have been contacted to help them.
And I don't know if you have read the Phase 3 book, but I feel like it's going to be like a big thing in Phase 3 because Nile will use their mastery over the hyperlanes in order to basically blockade of part of the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand why they are using it as a story device, why they are using it as a metaphor, but overall it was overused in this story.
Yeah, I do think it goes a bit far. I don't mind it as like a premise. I don't have a problem with most of how it's used. It just gets emphasized so much as like that was cut and now there's no one else we could possibly contact because there was just this one communication spur, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does end up being a little bit forced for those.
At the same time, I really liked like it's not only this book; it's in almost every new canon book. The Force, obviously, the Force, but there's now a religious aspect to it. Like they're not only Jedi, and like in old canon we had Jedi and we had other Force users, right? In new canon we still have other Force users, but we also have different religious views on the Force. And let's say, imagine if in our world some kind of religious faith had a real world effect. that would obviously make all other religions have a opinion on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like before the new canon, the Star Wars kind of ignored the whole religious angle of the Force. Here, with the path of the open hand and closed fist, we are starting to get this idea that somebody might not like Jedi using the Force, not because they are like Sith or something, but just because they consider Force to be some kind of holy thing that should not be used by anyone.
Right. Yeah, there's
And
not as much interaction in Legends with people who aren't
yeah,
using it. Like it's more of a tool than anything.
yeah, and again, imagine like in the real world, some kind of religion has a real magic working. That would obviously change the entire outlook of the galaxy, right? The entire outlook of the world on said religion and said tool or magic or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
And new canon, in most stories that I have read, there's some kind of interaction with the Force, not as a magic, but as a fate, as a matter of fate, like what different people think about Force, etc. And I feel like we should have read the Battle of Jeddah because there's a whole debate between various religious orders who basically see Force um, as a real thing. And we should have. I feel like I will go back and read it, obviously, but we should have read it with you.
I mean, we'll get to it as its own thing eventually, but I don't think is necessary or should be necessary for reading and understanding what's going. Like,
Yeah,
sure, it adds stuff,
that's
but
not my point. That's not my point. My point is that I just like the new outlook on the Force.
right.
I feel like it's being a real fate. It's more interesting in a way. It's like closer to what would happen in the real
Yeah,
world.
there's been a lot of comments on both this and Convergence of like, oh well, you guys didn't read the other thing, that's why you don't know what's going on. But like so
Can we
I'm
read one
jumping
thing
in
and
through
understand
that.
as a
Yeah,
standalone?
but like it's not that we don't know what's going on when we say there's too much going on in this book. It's not because we don't have the background for the other stuff. It's because the characters in this book don't get that much focus as a result of it doing so much. Like there's nothing in here where I was like, "Oh, I don't understand what's happening with these characters." It was like, "Okay, I just feel like I'm retreading the plot of Convergence for these characters in the space of 20 pages instead of them having that whole book to work it out." And I think that's where, like, yes, you do get extra context by doing the other books first. And I know this isn't what you're saying, but just to address those
Yeah.
complaints.
And for the first time in adult books, we get Yoda and Yaddle, which is
Yeah,
something.
at least actually doing something. Like Yoda gets mentioned and shows up as a side character in Phase One a bit, but
Eh,
in because I think he's at Starlight Beacon at some point. But yeah, him actually doing something here.
not in the adult books. I think
Yeah,
he's in Starlight Beacon in the comics and in one of the junior novels. Uh, which again, at some point we have to read, etc., etc. But the story is not that complicated. It's not a
yeah,
complication of the story. It's just the way the lore is built. You kind of feel, at least it's my opinion, they made the lore building in terms of meta very complicated. Like, let's say something like Aftermath Trilogy and Alphabet Squadron, right?
mm-hmm.
These two trilogies, they kind of happen at the same time and they end at the same point. But you kind of don't feel the need to read one to understand the other one.
Mm-hmm.
The High Republic is kind of more convoluted in this regard. Like I understand that they wanted to appeal to as wide as an audience as possible.
So I don't think I agree.
Okay, go ahead.
Like you get more out of reading all of the High Republic phases comics, like young adult versus adult, than you do from the combination of Aftermath and Alphabet Squadron. But again, there's nothing. I've read both Phase 1 and Phase 2 kind of piecemeal, where Phase 1, I read the adult novels, and then we kind of did the young adult novels separately. We
Mhm.
didn't even finish all the young adult novels, and I haven't read any of the comics for either phase yet. Where, like, I never felt like there was a thing that I didn't understand going on in Convergence or Cataclysm, having only read the adult novels. Like, sure, I may be missing context on, like, why what some of they're doing matters, but when people, it's something that came up with Ahsoka a lot too. A lot of
Mhm.
situations where people are saying, oh, well, you don't understand this if you didn't read or watch that. It's usually people who did read or watch that saying that other people who didn't don't understand it, rather than people who didn't watch it or read it saying that they didn't understand what was going on. So it's a lot of people projecting what they assume people's experience will be, when really, if you take the story actually being told in Cataclysm or the story actually being told in Convergence, I may not know why Marta Rowe was doing specific stuff that she was, but I
Yes.
knew what she was doing. I knew how that related to what the other characters in the book were doing. I knew how that related to Irem and Arono. Like I feel like that's Cataclysm and Convergence could exist as their own stories on their own. It
Yeah.
would leave more open-ended things, but I don't think it impacts your ability to actually know what's going on.
To that end, like to add to your disagreement with me, uh, we'll talk about it separately. Like, why would you disagree with me? Like, jokes aside, but when we were reading Convergence, I had this feeling, bad feeling that this entire phase is kind of instead of telling a story, it will try to like uh, basically build a backstory for Mark Monroe. And after reading the second book, I don't feel like it. I feel like they were able to, instead of just telling the story of a leveler of Raw family, they told the story of the galaxy as they should have. Like
Mhm.
one example that I wrote down is that uh, when the first phase begins, we immediately see the Jedi on their starships and surrounded by like military style fleets.
Yeah.
In this one, we have nothing like that. We basically at it's the planet is called Dalna, right?
Yeah, where the battle happens.
Yeah, at the Battle of Dalna, which would be called the Night of Sorrow, we basically get a situation similar to what happened in Episode 2, where a bunch of Jedi are uh, trapped and lured and trapped and then killed in en masse. And for me, as someone who is a historian, and I probably look at every fantasy or sci-fi book as a historian, for me, it's a good evolution from more, I wouldn't say pacifist, but less militarized Jedi to more militarized Jedi.
Yeah.
And especially if you look at the phases from like chronological point of view, and you start from the second phase and to the first phase, you'll see that chronologically, Jedi moved all the way from okay, we're traveling to like other planets as a diplomats, and we're traveling as like maybe judges, something like that. To all the way, the Jedi is a general of the Republican Navy, like commander of the Republican Army.
Mhm.
So this militarization of the Jedi uh, is a very good story evolution. Like even if the characters are forgettable, even if the story arcs and not story arcs, character arcs are not there, in terms of like galaxy-wide arc, we have one.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say that the characters are forgettable. Like, I enjoy 90% of the characters we do have, other than the ones that are just like mashed together, like Crichton and Sharil, who just don't feel like they have that much going on
Yeah.
their own. Uh, but it's just the problem is just more how little time any of them really get in this book to go anywhere, and then the kind of character arc turning into a character circle for a lot of the ones in the prior book.
Yeah.
Where like I really enjoyed like Orin, the character who was introduced in
Yeah.
this one. He was only around for a short time, Like a lot of them are still really fun characters, and I
Yeah,
still enjoyed the
they're unique
characters.
in a way.
Yeah,
I just don't feel the connection with them. I guess like Phase One characters in the first book, in the very first book, I felt like it's overwhelming. But maybe because it was 3 books, maybe because they just had more time. But by the end of the third book, I felt like connection to, like, let's say, Elder Man, right?
right.
You kind of start to understand what he's about. You kind of see his progression from completely um, what's the word? Ideal
Stud. Oh,
start is a word that you would use, but I don't call Jedi studs because like I don't like it. So he moves all the way from the ideal knight to someone who doesn't understand his place in the world, in the galaxy, to someone who is trying to find a new way. And it's a good story arc for him, I feel like.
hmm.
And I'm kind of excited for the Phase 3 because I really want to go back to the characters of the Phase 1 right now.
Yeah, and I guess just to loop back a little bit on what you said a bit earlier, where I think it was misinterpreted a bit by some in chat at least, where you were saying you
Are you
expected
reading chat?
when you were
Why would,
saying what?
why would you read the chat?
Just to get a sense of what people are thinking about what we're saying. It's not there's
Okay.
not that much to read, Ilkin. It's not a very active channel. But when you were saying you expected Phase Two to be about like just getting a backstory for Martian Row, it's not that you were saying that backstory doesn't exist in this or the other
It
books.
does exist,
Yeah,
but
it's
it's
just
not the
that is
main
not the
point.
point. Like the phase
Yeah.
isn't just something to throw that out there. We are aware that if you read the other books, you'll get more of that because again, the criticism isn't that oh they're lacking the backstory. How are we
No,
getting
no,
it?
no.
It's not. It wasn't even a
Again,
criticism.
to reiterate, maybe your chat doesn't understand my immigrant accent, so I will reiterate. So my point is that I was afraid that this phase will be entirely dedicated to it.
Yeah.
Like the entire point will be okay. Here's Marky on Raw. He's hot for some reason. You guys like vampires, right? He's hot, so here's his backstory. In reality, it's not his backstory. It's a backstory of the galaxy, more or less, and
Yeah.
that's what I liked about the second phase.
Yeah.
I still don't feel like it was like necessary,
I mean, it's
and
not many more necessary than the prequels were for.
nothing is necessary in the world. I understand. Like we can just go with something better than Star Wars,
We could
right?
just go into nihilism and then why read anything, really?
Exactly. For instance, Justin can't read, so and he's doing well, right? I know that he's not watching that, so I can say whatever I want about him, right?
Yeah, there's no way he'd listen.
Okay, it's fine. I love the guy, but yeah.
Again,
My
he's not
point is,
listening. You don't need to lie about it.
okay, I adore him. Uh, so my my point is that uh, again, I have this conspiracy theory, and you can't prove me wrong because this is conspiracy theory. My theory was that uh, third phase was going to be what we'll see in what's the name of that show?
Acolyte?
Acolyte. That's my conspiracy theory. That's I know that what you will say that it was planned before, it was planned like that, etc., etc. But you are wrong, and I'm right. You're
It's not even that I disagree with your conspiracy theory. I just don't even think it makes sense.
why?
It's just the time difference there. It's bigger,
No,
and
okay. I what I mean is that Acolyte would still be about some. Okay, we don't know what it's about, but like I think the word Acolyte means that there will be some kind of like dark force users, right?
it's about some of the older or some of the High Republic Phase One characters being really old,
Yes.
really old,
I
like
know, I understand, but
unbelievably old.
like the events of the Acolyte could have been set like 20 years before episode 1 or like 120 years. and nothing would have changed, right, in terms of like chronology of the universe. So my point is that Phase 3 was going to be Acolyte, but then they changed their mind. Why? Because at some point during the pandemic, everybody decided that we need to release as many shows as possible. So Acolyte, again, this is conspiracy theory. Please don't think that I'm correct.
0 out of 10. 0 out of 10 conspiracy theory.
Okay, chat, what do you think?
Oh, now we appeal to chat. Now that you're back against the wall. I don't know. I feel like if they had planned to do like Phase 1 and Phase 2 like this, having it be a show for Phase 3, like,
no, I think that there was no plan for a show. I feel like the show that we'll get, it was basically Phase 3. Okay.
like, I mean, the writing and the casting of the show would have been around the same time as some of the production of the High Republic stuff. So there would have been like, oh, who are the people that we're getting as Elzar Mann and Stellan Geos, and I guess not Stellan anymore, R.I.P. And Evar Chris. Like, I feel like there would have been more signs that it was going to continue some of that if that was ever going to be the case.
Okay.
Rather than,
I had no idea that you are such a Disney shill. I had no idea,
yeah.
But now I
what
know.
What does that even mean? That I don't think the show was based on?
No, I honestly, like, I'm looking at the entire like landscape of what they're doing in terms of like streaming business, and I feel like, especially Star Wars, super reactive. Like we have seen it with the sequel trilogy too, right?
Mhm.
Every movie was a reaction to something that happened before it, and basically they changed every episode, like. And it was especially the case with episode 9, where they didn't have like a working, okay, why I'm going into sequels? Why does every conversation I'm having ever is ending in sequels? Episode 9 was basically rewritten at the last second.
Not at the last second that people think it was.
Yeah, from what I have heard, and obviously you probably have heard more, but okay, maybe not last second.
I mean,
last
it was
month.
rewritten late into the process, but usually people talk about that as if it was like rewritten in response to the Last Jedi response. But that isn't the case because there wouldn't have been time for that to happen.
Do you think it was rewritten as a response to Book of Henry?
I think it was just they didn't like what they got out of Trevorrow or Alan Dean Foster's Mecha Ray treatment, which is it was something. But I think, like, I don't know. I think the stuff that happened in episode 9 is very much what I would expect J.J. Abrams to do with a lot of it.
Yes, right. Yes, exactly. Like it's who J.J. Abrams is. J.J. Abrams, as some call him.
Mm-hmm.
But
we're getting very far off of High Republic.
Yes. So back to the High Republic and back to Phase 2, which had to be Phase 0 in my opinion. So one thing that I really liked about this book, and back to the book, it has very strong historical allusions, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's this idea at some point the two planets come together against basically one of the princes is like we have to work for good, we can change the world for good, etc. And I started to think about it in terms of like real world history, and it's true that we constantly get people and groups and etc. Who try to do their best to improve the situation, but sometimes, despite their best tries, the situation deteriorates more and more. And like the jump in terms of chronology from Phase 2 to Phase 1 shows that by the time Phase 1 rolls out, the galaxy is a far worse place. And you can see it in the Jedi, you can see it in the the planets of the region. You can see it in the galactic politics. Like if you look at two chancellors of the Republic in this book, Molo and Greylark,
Yep.
they look a bit more idealistic than what we get from the Phase
From
1
Palpatine.
chancellor.
Oh, yeah, that as well.
What's
Linus
his name?
L.
Yes. She's more of a politician. She's more of a power player, I guess would be the word. And you start seeing these senators trying to subvert the republic. We see the senators trying to basically improve their financial or political situation using the problems in the outer rim.
Yeah.
It's just in this regard, I feel like Star Wars is really strong. Again, as a vehicle to show what can happen in the history of a galaxy on a wider scale.
Yeah. I definitely agree. Like the stuff we see with Malo and Greylark, even if we kind of get the suspicions between the both of them the whole time, which is kind of what starts eating away at their ability to function. But there is in their arrangement this implicit, even explicit assumption or idea that no one person is going to have a perfect idea on how to handle everything. They're all going to have their different strengths and weaknesses. And even though Chancellor Greylark kind of does step away for the right reasons here to like focus on Axel to make things up to him, and because she was a little bit compromised in her ability to act in the interests of the Republic at that point, or that was just not going to be able to be a focus for her. Part of that is what kind of starts the road down to Palpatine being able to take all that power into himself. And I think like there are not just historical but contemporary reasons that this would be a focus for the High Republic authors. Like there's
Question
always
for you. I'm not sure. Maybe I missed it. Is there a clear indications that there were always two chancellors before that?
I don't know if there I don't think there were. I think it is set up as being like, oh, this is a neat trick we're doing. But I don't know. I don't know if it's something they're going to extend more commonly back because they do kind of talk about it as if it's a weird thing they're doing
Okay.
that works out. But I wouldn't be confident in answering that one way or another.
What did you think about Axel's trauma? Trauma.
Dude just seems kind of whiny. Like it wasn't that bad. It was bad, but like his reaction to it was disproportionate, especially for how often he seems to be relitigating it and putting it on to other people. Like,
Have I missed it? Like we know that his father was killed on a diplomatic missions while a senator, and we know that there was a Jedi who was like accompanying them.
yeah,
Do we have like explanation what happens there? Like why he hates a Jedi? Maybe.
it was explained enough. But that part, because like we both read this about a month or
2
two
months
ago
ago.
now, and then
Yeah.
I reread it like on 5 times speed in the last week to get as much back into my brain as possible because I had a bunch of stuff going on in the last week that required me to not be staring at Star Wars as much as I would have liked. So the explanation is there, but I don't think it like he's definitely got a skewed perspective on what happened, even from his account of it, where it's more that he's blaming the Jedi for not helping them than anything. And it's like it's not like he blames the Jedi for going up and like stabbing his dad. It's that the Jedi should have been able to save the dad as well, and
Yeah.
he held that against them.
The only thing that I kinda can think as an explanation why he's like that, why are you like that? So basically his mom abandoned him and he had to rely on his new friends, and one of his new friends is basically a member of the I Hate Jedi Club.
Yeah, his mom. So what happened was his mom was busy all the time with her work. He'd gone through this trauma as a young child, and then her opponents in the Senate got hold of his laptop. And wait, no, that's something else. But the
And on this laptop, he was having fun with a bunch of
yeah,
Twi'leks.
it turned into a whole thing. But but no, it was
Considering,
largely she was so busy.
considering, considering the fact that the son of other senator was openly in business with the Huts, considering that,
No, but it was mostly like they went through this issue. She was so taken up by her work, and she was kind of making the decision for both of them that they should both make these sacrifices for her position as chancellor. So she would hold him to higher standards that he would constantly fly under. Uh, like it as far as their relationship goes, I think I did like how that was written, like just the specific focus on the two of them, where like I can understand where each of them is coming from, even if overall Axel's motivations I think are really flimsy for his for everyone still thinking he's a neat guy after all the shit he pulls and all the people he gets killed. Because he does some pretty messed up stuff. And it's not proportional to
yeah,
the
that's
issues that he was
what I wanted.
blaming other people on.
Disproportionate. Like the reaction is disproportionate. Again, I don't want to be like a personal psychiatrist of this nepo baby, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was a bit too much.
Yeah, and just like people are still so willing to give him like through they just repeatedly get tricked by the same thing from him
Not
every time.
people.
They don't
What's her face? Gale?
Yella.
Gela. I'll call her Gale because Baldur's Gate. Gela. Okay. Gale. At least I didn't call her Shadowheart, right? So, Gela, like, how many times can Gela be fooled by this child?
Yes.
Like, it's a bit like, at this point, a Saturday Day cartoon
Yeah.
thing. Like, he's a villain, he escapes prison every time, and he fools a Jedi every time, okay?
Right. Like I think the thing that gets me with it more is like I'm great, like give everyone second chances if they prove they're atoning for something. That's the problem though. There's never a point in it where he ever takes responsibility in a way that seems like he actually means it or like ever says he's going to atone in some meaningful way. It's just like, okay, now I'm the good guy. I'm going to go sit in a prison and it's going to be okay. Or like this is just my opinion, but like sitting alone in a room, I don't consider to be actual atonement or justice. I don't consider that to be actually taking responsibility for anything he's done. He's never actually like really acknowledged, especially in the context of it happening in Convergence as well, where I got more of a feeling that he was taking some responsibility for bad things he did and trying to do better than here, where the whole time he's kind of doing shitty stuff. Then it just doesn't work out for him. And then he's like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And like, okay, yeah, you're a little upset that it's hurting people, but you would have known that going in. You hurt them directly yourself. And now you're just getting pissed off at like Bino for doing things that you were perfectly happy to do 5 minutes ago. And I'm not hearing you say, I did
Oh, yeah, you
this.
are getting
I made this
heated up.
choice. What?
You are getting heated up. Do you know Axel Grey like in your real life?
It's just he's a frustrating character in how he's handled in that way because it is just a loop. And I feel like you could open up if there were a book 3 in the adult novels for this, then we'd have Gela and another Jedi coming, breaking him out of prison. Oh, I'm good now. And then he just fucking does the same thing again because he's never like last time he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to prison." Blah blah blah. That's all. That's all nice for you. But what did you do wrong? Who did you hurt? Why will this not happen again?
Okay, our podcast about restorative justice will continue next week. Meanwhile,
I don't even need him to actually do anything. I'd be happier with him just saying what he did wrong more explicitly. And then you know what? If that's all I get, that's all I get. But it's better than like, okay, we're all cool with him now. He didn't really do anything that bad.
Okay.
You
That
got
was quite
Orin
a.
killed. Orin's dead now. He was kind
We
of funny.
we didn't even know Orin. That's fine.
My favorite character in Phase 2, and he's just fucking gone.
He's no loading Great Storm.
Lone Great Storm overrated. Can't wait to make my nephews watch Young Jedi Adventures, point at him, and be like, that guy dies when a wolf looks at him.
Wolf.
Whatever you want to. I mean, the Nameless are they're kind of wolves. Dave Filoni's going to turn them into a live action wolf, right?
You think there will be live action High Republic?
We got animated High Republic. We've got Vernestra Rowe that's coming in the Acolyte. Maybe we'll see a pile of dust in the corner of the Jedi Temple, and one of the characters will be like, "Oh, there's the remains of Master Greatstorm."
Oof.
I think we'll
And
probably see
now,
the Kyber Arch. I think that'd be cool to look at in live action. I hope we see
okay, yeah,
that.
so that can be cool. Like if it's about Acolyte, I feel like the whole Master and Padawan thing will be central to the TV show. Well, not
Mhm.
central, but like it will be at least featured somehow.
Yeah,
I'm more interested, like, are we going to see Yoda or something?
yeah.
Yes?
We're definitely getting a Yoda cameo.
Okay.
He's going to be around somewhere. And more excitingly, Oppo Rancisis, the final boss in Jedi 3, whatever it ends up being called.
Uh, and we obviously need to see a Santeka,
Probably.
because without Santeka there is no party, obviously.
Well, once the Nile stuff is resolved, I don't know if the Santekas are going to be as important.
Well, we see them in the sequel trilogy, so yeah.
Yeah, but they're just kind of a Jedi janitor or something at that point.
The word is archivist. I don't
Janitor.
know why you hate librarians, but yeah, not cool.
You're just gonna say libertarians because there's different reasons.
You'll Do you hate me?
No.
Okay. I I'm not going to give you the whole left libertarian speech right now, okay?
But
Uh
the I think the other thing with Axel, who I'm going to complain about a little bit more here, is that the one difference I do see with how this could work differently for him compared to the end of Convergence is now Chancellor Greylark is going to be there, so that kind
mhm.
of loops some stuff in for him. Though I do
Okay.
still think that he is responsible for his own choices, even if the trauma may explain his choices, not excuse them.
So, is
But
that the word we're using?
excuse versus explain.
I'm a nepo baby myself, so I hated him. I hated him so much.
I mean, my problem with his actions isn't that he's a nepo baby. That's a whole different issue that the Republic needs to deal with at some point. But the it's the choices he makes.
Okay. What did you think about Yaddle deciding that it's a good idea to walk into like a battle with a little child?
It's a very powerful literal child. So like
Okay, but
Chippa gets a lot done. I wouldn't. So if I'm going into that situation, I'm Yaddle, and I have like the one ship I've got this kid I need to look out for, who I know is a mischievous little one, and I have two of these guards who the child could probably beat the shit out of if they felt like it, and then does do that. If I'm worried about the whole situation on the planet, I am probably not leaving the child to be guarded by them, because that is just a poor tactical choice, let alone the responsibility for bringing the child there in the first place.
so what you're saying is that I need to learn parenting from Yaddle.
I mean, if you want your child to be in as much danger as possible and be the most responsible person in the room when it happens, then I guess. But like what were those two gonna do if something happened?
I have no idea. I'm just trying to understand like why it was happening. In general, like there's a bit of chaos in terms of which Jedi ends up where.
Mhm.
It over like missions, etc. And if you think about it, that's actually good. Like it makes the story um, a bit less formulaic, I guess.
Mhm.
Like instead of getting some kind of like your standard two Jedi and two Padawans, we're getting like that's a standard Jedi group, right? Two Jedis and two Padawan. Like we see that in Clone Wars, in other media.
Yeah, they kind of have
Uh,
that with Enya and
yeah,
Yella and
actually, we
them in
do.
the.
But like at least Yaddle and Chipa, they make it a bit less formulaic, in my opinion.
Well, she's more on a delivery mission with Chippa too. But
Hmm.
I do think it does kind of work with like there's all these Jedi that are drawn to Dalna for force-based reasons, but they're all starting to get so clouded that none of them realizes anyone else is there until they're actually in the same place. So
Until they start dying.
yeah, well that they could have maybe avoided that a little bit better. But it's kind of like
Speaking
if
of,
they go to Geonosis in episode 2 and
mhm.
then you have like instead of having the Republic mission to rescue them, they just run into Mace Windu, who's doing some grocery shopping at the time and happened to come across a droid factory. And then like Coyote Mundy's there because he was dropping the kid off at school, and he happened to find the droid factory. It's contrived in a Star Wars enough way that I think it works, but it obviously does not go very well for them.
Speaking of being force sensitive, how do you think the path of the open hand was able to learn that someone is force sensitive within them? Just by the way they reacted to the levelers?
I think the levelers going after them is probably where they get that because they don't seem to realize it about Bino. So maybe he
Yeah.
just hasn't been
But
exposed
like,
to it enough.
it feels like the mother knows that Bino is force sensitive.
I think she might be a little bit of a hypocrite.
Okay.
Far be it from me to accuse a cult leader of having some hypocritical tendencies, but
Well, at least she doesn't have like a sex cult, right?
well, we can't say that. We haven't read the young adult novels.
That's true. If there's a sex cult, it will be there. That's a
Yeah.
good point.
I don't see any reason to believe it wouldn't. You just got to read between the lines.
Okay.
But it does make me excited to go back and explore the aftermath of all this in Phase 3, and I am looking forward to reading the young adult novels. Which, if Justin is not going to be engaging with Phase 2, then maybe we can have you back on to go over all the stuff that we've missed, and maybe we'll be able to convince Justin to join us. But do you have any overall thoughts about the two adult novels in Phase 2?
Overall, I liked them. Like, as Star Wars books go, they were not bad. They were good. Like, I think I gave like B to the Convergence,
Mm-hmm.
and Cataclysm also gets B for me. Like, if it's like on a curve, I felt like they're kind of similar in
Mm-hmm.
terms of quality. Again, it's difficult to judge Star Wars books. Like, I have been reading the last. It's my guilty pleasure, so I hope you guys will forgive me. I have been reading the last Drist
Twilight.
books
Oh.
by Robert Salvatore. They're easy to read. They are basically in the same universe as Baldur's Gate is set at the same time, by the way. So it's kind of like interesting. But the thing is, he doesn't have this pressure of telling a certain story, I guess. You see that in Star Wars long series all the time. Like, you guys at some point will go back to reading and discussing the new Jedi Order, right? Uh, there's 15 books, 16 books,
19.
19. And it sometimes feels like the author is forced to tell a certain story. and they don't exactly have what, let's say, George Martin or Robert Jordan had in their series. They can't like, oh, I started as a 5-book series, but now I decided to write 10 books. Good luck. They can't do that. They are. I don't want to sound like negative, but they're more or less like a hired guns. I didn't want to use the word mercenary. And the books are good, but I felt in every Star Wars book you feel it to an extent that they're kind of written by committee because like they are because they have to end at a certain point. They have certain topics, certain events should happen, certain characters should be in a certain place, blah blah blah. Obviously, this phase is a bit less connected to the larger Star Wars, I guess. Like they didn't have as much constraints as, let's say, someone who writes about the Battle of Jakku again will have, right? At the same time, they still had to hit certain notes and certain story events. Yeah, for instance, if you talk about the nameless ones or nameless? Levelers. There are multiple of them here. And a few Jedi actually see them and survive it. Right?
Yep.
I think so. So it's kind of a bit contrived that the Jedi don't know what's happening in the phase 1. Like this is like in the epilogue, Yoda and what's his face, they kind of decide not to talk about it again. Not to talk about levelers, but it's kind of difficult to imagine that someone like Loden Greatstorm dies in a certain way, and Yoda is not there. Okay, guys, I had a secret from you. There's this wolf creature who, I don't know, fucks with Force somehow.
And there's a whole prophecy that we're just gonna ignore.
Yeah, it just seems a bit contrived. Obviously, like they had to end in a place where there's just one leveler because we only have one leveler in the phase 1, and probably in phase 3 we'll have just one, right? And it seems like it's the strongest one.
Yeah, it seems like it's like it just eviscerates that Taller tie. So
yeah. So
but it's been gone for a while. Yoda has other things going on, and like
what?
Yeah,
Hiding stuff from his like coworkers. Sure, why not?
That's what he does. Hey, this is why the Jedi are falling, because Yoda does not share.
There is this old article which pops up like every few months. Why the Jedi Order fell, and basically the point is that it's because they were all on the distant call and never in the same room. Because of the council like having like holocalls all the time.
Yeah.
And now more than ever it feels like it's true, because Jedi should have everything in their archive in theory, especially stuff connected to the Force. And for some reason, leveler things happens again 70 years later? Is it 70, 80 years later?
I don't remember the exact branch. I just think of it as 100, which I know is not correct.
Maybe it's 100 and something.
I was actually before I started going back through it, I went to the timeline page, which I like that they still do it. But the problem I have with it is like they don't have the years anymore. So where the old ones they have like the actual year that everything takes place in next to it in the timeline. Here it just lists them kind of in order, which is a little sad.
Okay, so Night of Sorrow is in 382. And destruction of the Starlight Beacon is 230. So 150 years. I still feel like it's like forgetting who Napoleon was,
Well,
more or less.
yeah, because it's the Duke of Wellington forgetting who Napoleon was.
Yeah,
Because Yaddle was there. A
yeah,
lot of
Yoda
them
and Yoda were
died. And maybe they didn't see them directly, but they knew this stuff was happening. And then there are people who kind of came out. I guess for the people on Starlight Beacon, it's more forgivable that they're not in the moment knowing what's happening.
They're young Jedi, right? A bunch of young Jedi who
Yeah. But
don't
like
know.
once the stuff happens to Loden in
Yeah.
Rising Storm, then it should be a thing for Yoda and Yaddle to be like, oh, and Oppo and Yariel Poof. Like a lot of them are there. Actually, I don't know if Oppo and Yariel are there in Phase 2. Not sure about
Well,
that.
but you agree with the overall premise, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
it's kind of like, again, nothing against the artists. They are not responsible, basically, but be better.
I
Basically.
mean, you kind of expect some stuff to be a little contrived.
Yeah, obviously, like it's a story, and because the events are in terms of like publishing date, they are not chronological.
Yeah.
You kind of understand why it's happening.
Well, it's
But
almost the same thing as you get with the OT to the prequels, where the things that were big in the OT, you end up turning into a bigger deal in the prequels, even if they're details. So, like, if we're telling the story about uh, like the Nile and the Leveler in Phase 1, if you want to go back in time and do a prequel thing to it, you're giving them an even bigger role, even if like parts of that don't line up quite as well. Which is kind of the same as like, oh, Obi-Wan is wearing this robe because he's on Tatooine, but now that's just what Jedi wear every day.
yeah.
But
What do you think about Acolyte in terms of connection to the Phase 3? Do you think whatever force that will be the villain, it will somehow be connected to the Nile or not?
I really don't know. Like other stuff has been willing to work them in, so something tied to it maybe, but I'm still not 100% sure when they're going to have it set, and I haven't read the first book for Phase 3 yet. So like there's going to be some sort of connection somewhere. I just don't know what it is yet. Like I feel like Acolyte will be closer to the High Republic books than Eclipse will, for example.
Okay, that makes sense.
Like in Survivor, they were able to use the Nile as like part of the backstory for Tanalorr, and they didn't even really need to say the name Nile. They were just able to put that in. So I think the references we get to it will probably be more on that scale, where they'll be referenced as events that may have happened or influenced things. But it's not going to be like Vernestra Rowe shows up and says like, "Let me tell you about Martian Rowe," because he was a hot vampire.
That was the weirdest reveal for me. Like, I don't know why they invented that race. Whatever.
But well, I mean, there's the Nagai, the Nile and Nagai are actually very closely related. But yeah, so I agree. I like both of them, but I actually I think I have this a little bit lower than
Okay.
Convergence relatively. Like I think I'd
Because
probably put them
I
both
agree with you.
be.
That's just too much happening at the same time. Like, they should have
Oh,
got
did I
rid
put the
of.
wrong thumbnail up?
Really?
Oh,
And you do that
it
on
didn't
the
save
podcast
the
with me?
thumbnail. God damn it. YouTube is fun. But anyway.
Speaking of YouTube and fun, do you want to do the Phase 3 Book 1 sometime in the near future?
Well, so Justin is going to be on board for that one. So I'm not sure when exactly we're going to do it because I think we might be doing the next NJO book next week. I have to check with Justin on what we're actually going to be doing. Now it'll actually save. Fucking
Nice.
YouTube. Uh,
Anyways, you guys decide, and if you want to do it, I kind of don't mind doing it. So if you guys decide that you don't want to do it, I'm ready.
well, we will get you on board for more High Republic fun. I think I'd
Yeah.
probably put this at a B or a C. I have to check where exactly I put Cataclysm or Convergence, but it's probably still in the B range for me. It just feels like slightly below what we got in Convergence. But
The thing is, like, as a book, it's not bad. Like as a standalone story, it's not bad. It's just has to do too much. Like even if it got rid of just one storyline, let's say the piece between Irono and the
Irem,
other planet, yeah, Iram, just get rid of it. Just the thing on Jeddah happened, and they still somehow pieced out. Cool. But because it now has to connect to the Starlight Beacon, they blah blah blah, etc.
yeah, I could have dealt with. I feel like they could have had more time to explore other stuff if they hadn't needed to retread some of those animosities, because it felt like a
Yeah.
backslide more than a further exploration of it. But yeah. So later tonight, I think in about half an hour, Ilkin and I will be with Justin, Charlie, and Zach playing some Star Wars Family Feud over on youtube.com/ECKSTOO, as well as on twitch.tv/Corey Loses, potentially. I don't know if I'll actually be live, depending on how we do it. But we'll be having some fun with that. Otherwise, next week I will try to put out a tweet saying exactly what we're going to be doing, me and Justin, because he will be back. Whether it'll be a Q&A episode, because we haven't done that in a while, or if we're going to have time to read either the next NJO book or the first High Republic Phase 3 book. We'll figure it out, but we should be back to a more regular TapCaf schedule now that my grandma has not died yet, and Justin's
I'm
not
sorry
going to
for the
Weathers.
question. This is very important. Is there any property involved?
Any property involved?
Like,
Like an inheritance?
yes,
I
I'm
don't know. So that's the
I'm
thing.
I'm rooting for you. That's very
I
important.
mean, I would rather have my grandma be alive, but if
I
my
don't
grand
think I don't think you are thinking straight right now.
well,
Think
if
again.
so, my mom's dead already.
Okay.
So if she has a lot of siblings, my sister and I, we don't know if our grandma dies, if there is any inheritance, whether it'd go split between us for my mom's portion, or if it just goes to all her siblings. So I don't even know if I'd get anything out of it. So I'd rather just have her still stay alive. That's
Corey, you are a better person than me. Or maybe you think that she's listening. I don't know.
no, she has better stuff to do.
Hopefully.
All right.
Okay.
Well,
It was fun talking to you as usual.
thank you for joining me, Ilkin. See you in a couple minutes and hope to see the rest of you there as well. Good night.
The rest of me, no problem.